The boy was 11 years old. He was not stealing. He was drinking from the creek that ran along the eastern edge of the Danner Ranch. The creek that had no name on any map. The creek that the Apache had been drinking from for 200 years before the Danner Ranch existed. He was 11 years old and thirsty, and he was drinking from the creek when Hector Danner found him. Hector Danner was not a patient man on his best days. This was not his best day. He screamed at the boy, words that had no business being said to anyone. Words that the boy absorbed without flinching. The way you absorb something when you have learned that flinching only makes it worse. Then Hector Danner grabbed the boy by the collar and threw him off the property, into the road, into the dust, in front of everyone who happened to be passing. The boy stood up, did not cry, did not speak, looked at Hector Danner for one long moment, and walked away. That was 1871. In 1891, 20 years later, a rider came into Rimrock, Texas, and Hector Danner's world changed forever. This channel tells the stories of the Texas frontier where what you do to a child follows you for 20 years. Subscribe now. You need to hear what that boy became. West Texas, 1871. Rimrock was a town of 400 people trying to become 500. The kind of town that had decided what it was going to be and was not interested in complications. Hector Danner was 42 years old. He had come to Texas from Georgia after the war, with nothing but a land claim and a willingness to work that bordered on violence. He had built his ranch over 15 years, 800 acres, good water, good grass, the best spread in the county. He was not a man who had been given anything, and he was not a man who gave anything away, including water from his creek, even to an 11-year-old boy. The Apache boy had no name that Hector Danner bothered to learn. He was just a boy from the camp that had been moving through the area for weeks, one of several Apache families who had not yet been moved to the reservation, moving quietly through land they had once moved through freely, now moving carefully, with permission they should not have needed to ask for. The boy's name was Kestrel. His father had given him that name because as a baby he had watched things from a great distance with absolute stillness. The patience of a hunter, the patience of someone who understood that the right moment always came, if you waited long enough, if you watched carefully enough, if you did not flinch. Cal Briggs had not been in Rimrock in 1871. He had not seen what happened at the creek, but he heard about it 20 years later. Kestrel was the son of a man named Delshay. Delshay was not a warrior. He was a healer, one of the last Apache healers who still knew the full ceremonies, who still carried the knowledge that had been passed from healer to healer for generations, knowledge of plants, of the body, of the specific relationship between the two. Delshay had kept his family out of the wars, not from cowardice, from understanding. He had seen what happened to the warriors. He had seen where the fighting led. He was trying to find another way through. Kestrel had grown up watching his father choose patience over anger, every time, even when anger was what the situation deserved. And on the day at the creek, when Hector Danner screamed those words, when the hands grabbed his collar, when the dust of the road came up to meet him, Kestrel had thought of his father, had thought of the word patience, had thought of the Kestrel that watches from above, still, waiting, knowing the moment will come. He stood up, looked at Hector Danner, and walked away. 2 years later, his family was moved to the San Carlos Reservation. Kestrel was 13. At San Carlos, there was a school, run by a Methodist minister named Horace Webb. Horace Webb was not a perfect man, but he was an honest one. He looked at Kestrel and saw what was there, a mind that moved like water, finding every opening, going around every obstacle, never stopping. Webb taught him English, taught him reading, taught him mathematics. And then, when Kestrel was 15, Webb did something unusual. He wrote a letter to a law school in the East, describing a student of exceptional ability, and asked if there was any provision for a student of limited means and exceptional ability. The law school wrote back, there was. Kestrel left San Carlos at 16. He rode east on a horse that Horace Webb had bought with his own money. He did not look back, not because he was not sad to leave, but because looking back was not how you moved forward. He arrived at the law school in the fall. He was the only Apache student. He was one of 2 students who were not white. He was the youngest student in his year. He was also, within 2 years, the best student in his year. Not because the others were not intelligent, because Kestrel had something they did not. 20 years of understanding that the world was not arranged in his favor, and that the only way through it was to know it better than it knew itself. He graduated in 1887. He passed the bar examination in Texas in 1888. The examiner who administered the test had not previously examined an Apache candidate. He passed anyway, because Kestrel's score was high enough that failing him would have required explanation, and the examiner did not want to explain. Kestrel set up practice in a small office in San Antonio. He took cases that other lawyers did not want, land disputes, cases where one party had no money and the other had too much, cases where the law was technically on one side and justice was clearly on the other. He was very good at finding the distance between those two things and closing it. He had been practicing law for 3 years when he heard about the water rights case in Rimrock. A group of Apache families whose access to traditional water sources had been blocked by a ranch expansion. The ranch was called the Danner Ranch. 800 acres, good water, good grass, the best spread in Crockett County. Kestrel rode to Rimrock on a Tuesday morning in the spring of 1891. He was 31 years old. He rode a good horse. He wore a suit. He carried a briefcase. And in that briefcase, 20 years of patience. Cal Briggs had been in Rimrock for a week. He had been passing through on his way north when the water rights dispute had caught his attention. He had stopped, as he always stopped, when the specific quiet of a situation that needed watching settled over a town. He had been sitting in the hotel dining room when Kestrel rode in. He watched the man dismount, take his briefcase, walk into the land office. Cal watched for a long time. There was something about the way the man walked. Not arrogance, not aggression, certainty. The walk of someone who knows exactly where he is going and is known for a long time. Cal ordered another coffee and waited. Hector Danner arrived at the land office 20 minutes after Kestrel. He had been summoned by the land office clerk who had been presented with a legal filing that he did not fully understand, but understood enough to know it required the presence of the ranch owner. Cal watched Danner walk in. He watched the door of the land office. 20 minutes passed, 30, 40, then Danner came out. Cal had seen many men come out of many difficult situations in 30 years. He had learned to read what came out with them. Danner was pale, not angry, not loud. Pale, the specific paleness of a man who has just been shown something he cannot argue with. Cal stood up, left money on the table for the coffee, and walked to the land office. The land office clerk was a young man named Porter, who had been in the job for 3 years. He had never seen a filing like the one on his desk. He had also never seen anyone presented the way this man had presented it. Quietly, without theatrics, with the specific calm of someone who has prepared so thoroughly that calm is the only thing left. Cal came in and introduced himself. Kestrel looked at him. Cal looked at Kestrel. 2 men assessing each other, the way men do when they are trying to determine if the other is friend or obstacle. Cal Briggs, Cal said, former sheriff of this county. Kestrel, the man said, attorney, San Antonio. Cal looked at the filing on Porter's desk. May I? He said. Kestrel nodded. Cal read it. It took him 10 minutes. He was not a lawyer, but 30 years of enforcing the law had given him a working knowledge of how it operated. What he read was not a simple complaint, it was a comprehensive legal argument, built on federal treaty law, on the original land grants issued under the Republic of Texas, on the specific language of the water rights provisions, on 3 separate court precedents from other states, on a survey of the creek in question. That established its origin point on federal land before it crossed onto the Danner property, meaning the water itself was federal, meaning Danner's restriction of it was a federal matter, not just a county one. Cal set the filing down, looked at Kestrel. "This is good," he said. "How long did this take you?" Cal asked. 20 years, Kestrel said. Cal looked at him. Something in the answer was not entirely metaphorical. "You're from here," Cal said, not a question. Kestrel looked at him steadily. "I drank from that creek when I was 11 years old," he said. "Hector Danner threw me off his property." Cal was quiet for a long moment. "He didn't recognize you," Cal said. "No," Kestrel said. "Do you want him to?" Cal asked. Kestrel thought about it. "Not particularly," he said. "Then what do you want?" Cal asked. Kestrel looked at the filing on Porter's desk. "What I've always wanted," he said, "for the families to have access to the water." Hector Danner came back to the land office that afternoon with his own lawyer, a man named Brixton, who had handled Danner's legal matters for 15 years. Brixton was competent. He was also unprepared, not for the argument, for the man making it. He had expected, when told an Apache lawyer had filed against his client, something he could dismiss, something inadequate, something he could overwhelm with experience and confidence and the particular authority of a man who had never been thrown into the dust of a road when he was 11 years old. He got something else. Kestrel sat across the table from Brixton and Danner. Cal Briggs sat in the corner, not as a participant, as a witness, as he had sat in many rooms, watching. Brixton made his arguments. Kestrel answered each one, not loudly, not triumphantly, simply, with the specific economy of someone who is prepared so thoroughly that excess is unnecessary. After 40 minutes, Brixton asked for a recess. He and Danner went outside. Cal could see them through the window. Danner was talking rapidly. Brixton was listening with the expression of a man who has just realized the ground under him is softer than he thought. They came back in. Danner looked at Kestrel for the first time directly. He did not recognize him. 20 years, a suit, a briefcase, a different kind of presence than the boy at the creek. "What exactly do you want?" Danner said. "Water access," Kestrel said, "for the families, the original path to the creek, restored and legally protected." "That's all?" Danner said. "That's all," Kestrel said. Danner looked at him, at the filing, at his lawyer, at the filing again. "I need a week," he said. "You have 3 days," Kestrel said. It was the first time in the conversation that his voice carried anything other than complete neutrality. 3 days, the voice of someone who has been waiting 20 years and is done waiting. That evening, Cal found Kestrel at the hotel, eating supper alone. Cal asked if he could sit. Kestrel indicated the chair across from him. They ate for a while without speaking, the comfortable silence of 2 men who did not need to fill space with words. "The creek?" Cal said finally. "Yes," Kestrel said. "You were 11, Cal said. "Yes." "You remembered exactly which creek." "I remember everything about that day," Kestrel said. Cal looked at his plate. "How many Apache families are we talking about?" he asked. 7, Kestrel said. 41 people. 3 of them are elders who remember drinking from that creek before Danner was born. Cal nodded. "The federal argument is strong," Cal said. "It will hold," Kestrel said. "Brixton knows it will hold. That's why Danner asked for a week." 3 days, Cal said. The corner of Kestrel's mouth moved slightly. Not quite a smile, but something. "You gave him 3 days, Cal said. "I've been patient for 20 years, Kestrel said. 3 days is generous." Cal drank his coffee. "You could have asked for more," Cal said. "Damages, compensation." "I could have," Kestrel said. "Why didn't you?" Kestrel was quiet for a moment. Because my father taught me that what you ask for should be what you actually need, he said. The families need water, not money. Money doesn't grow corn, Kestrel said. Water does. Cal set his cup down, looked at the man across the table. 31 years old, Apache attorney, 20 years of patience made into a briefcase full of arguments. Your father was a wise man, Cal said. He was a healer, Kestrel said. He understood what things actually needed to survive. He looked at Cal. Water, he said. That's what they actually need. On the second day, not the third, Hector Danner sent word to the land office. He had made his decision. He would restore the water access, sign the legal agreement, provide a permanent easement for the Apache families to reach the creek. He did not explain why he had decided a day early. Cal had a theory. He had seen Brixton leave town that morning on the early stage. When a lawyer leaves town before the resolution of a case he was hired to fight, it means the lawyer has told his client something the client did not want to hear. Something like, we cannot win this, or even if we win this particular argument, the federal angle creates a problem that will cost more than the water access is worth. Or sometimes the right thing to do is also the practical thing to do. Danner signed the agreement at the land office at 2 in the afternoon. Kestrel signed opposite him. Porter stamped and filed it. Cal witnessed it. Danner looked at Kestrel while he signed, the look of a man trying to place a face. Something familiar about the eyes, the specific stillness, the way the man looked at things without flinching. He did not place it. He signed the paper and left without speaking. Kestrel looked at the stamped document for a long moment. Then he folded it, put it in his briefcase, stood up. Thank you, he said to Porter. Porter, who had spent 2 days in the middle of something he would tell his grandchildren about, nodded. Thank you, he said, and meant it entirely. Cal walked with Kestrel to the hitching post where his horse was tied. What happens now? Cal asked. I ride to the camp, Kestrel said. Show them the document. And then? And then the families walk to the creek, Kestrel said, the way they have always walked to the creek. He secured the briefcase to his saddlebag, checked the cinch, prepared to mount. He didn't recognize you, Cal said. No, Kestrel said. Does that bother you? Kestrel thought about it, genuinely considered the question. No, he said. Why not? Kestrel looked toward the east, toward the Danner Ranch, toward the creek he had drunk from when he was 11 years old. Because this was never about him recognizing me, he said. It was about the families having water. He mounted his horse, looked down at Cal. My father said the kestrel does not hunt to be seen hunting, he said. It hunts to eat. Cal looked up at him. Your father was right, he said. Kestrel nodded, turned his horse east, rode toward the camp, toward the families who would walk to the creek the next morning, who would drink from water that was theirs again, not because the world had become just, but because one man had been patient enough to make one corner of it more just than it had been. Cal watched him go, reached into his coat pocket, not for a gun, for his journal. He wrote 2 lines. The kestrel does not hunt to be seen hunting, it hunts to eat. He underlined both. Hector Danner lived for 11 more years after the signing. He never learned who the lawyer was. He never learned that the man who had made him sign that document had once been thrown by his own hands into the dust of the road. Some people might find that unsatisfying, might want the recognition, the moment of realization, the look on Danner's face. Kestrel did not want those things. He had been taught by a healer that the measure of what you do is not in how it makes you feel. It is in what it produces. The families had water. The elders who remembered drinking from that creek before Danner was born drank from it again before they died. That was the measure. That was enough. Cal Briggs rode out of Rimrock 2 days after the signing. He thought about Kestrel for a long time as he rode north, about the 11-year-old boy in the dust of the road, about the patience it took to transform that moment into a briefcase full of arguments, about what his father had taught him, about the kestrel that watches without flinching, that waits without bitterness, that hunts not to be seen, but to feed. There is a kind of strength that does not announce itself, that does not need to be recognized, that does not require the person who caused the harm to understand what they caused. It only requires that the harm be answered, quietly, precisely, with 20 years of patience and one good filing. Kestrel had that kind of strength. His father had given it to him, along with a name. That turned out to be exactly right. Every week on this channel, Cal Briggs rides into another town where something needs to be done. This story is a work of fiction, inspired by the history of the Texas frontier and the Apache people who knew its water long before anyone else arrived to claim it. If it stayed with you, subscribe. Tell us in the comments. Have you ever waited a long time to do something right? Was the waiting worth it? The next town is already waiting.